What's up, and welcome back to the Kind of Funny Screencast, and welcome back to a galaxy far, far away. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I'm joined by the sad boy himself, Barrett Courtney.
Tim, I'm ready to talk about Star Wars again. It's been too long, and I'm so glad to be here with the Star Wars crew to talk about some Star Wars.
And the rest of the Star Wars crew, of course, also includes Pixel Circus's own Saige Ryan. Saige, with a brand new haircut. How you doing?
Thank you. I would love to look a little more alien for this, but I am serving this Earth's Halloween, unfortunately. Yes, I'm ready to talk about a Star Wars.
Would you
this
say
Earth's Halloween? This Earth's Halloween.
Do you want to get involved in the race for the Halloween King? Because I feel like you're deserving more than Greg Miller or Blessing will ever be.
Fucking come at me, guys. Let's go. Absolutely.
And rounding out our group for today, he survived a truck accident. It's Anthony Carboni. Anthony, how the hell are you doing? Are you okay?
Tim Geddes, I literally got hit by a truck on Sunday night so hard that my shoes flew off my feet like a cartoon character and landed 10 feet from my body. And I am here to talk about Star Wars.
Some things never change. I mean, real talk though. Like, what is the condition of your body?
I am not going to go into that here in mixed company. It is gross, but I am fine. Good. And I am really enjoying Andor.
Good. That is what matters. Everybody, go send some sweet, nasty love to Anthony Carboni wherever you would like to do that on the social medias and all that stuff. But enough of all of that. We have things to talk about because this is the Kind of Funny Screencast where each and every week we get together to talk about the latest in TV, movies, and trailers. And guess what? Things are popping off right now. We're doing like 1 million of these a week. We're doing them for Star Wars Andor. We're doing them for Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, Hot D. We're doing them for Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, and of course, She-Hulk. All 4 of them every single week when we can. We're trying our best here. Just try to get by, all right? You can get by with us on youtube.com/kindoffunny, where we record this live. You can also record it or watch it later as a VOD, also on roosterteeth.com. If you want to get it as a podcast, search your favorite podcast service for Kind of Funny Screencast. We'll be right there for you. If you want to get the show ad-free, though, you got to go to patreon.com/kindoffunny, just like our Patreon producers, Fargo Brady and Molecule, have done. Today, we're brought to you by Shopify and MeUndies, but I'll tell you all about that later. Want to start this off saying this was supposed to be the second time this group reunited. We were supposed to do Star Wars Rogue One in review rewatch last week, but of course Anthony got hurt, so we didn't.
Anthony went ahead and got hit by a truck.
Making everything about
picked
yourself.
A fight with a truck at a bar, and so we could not. And I did not know when to step down. I get a couple drinks in me, and I'll fight any truck.
Yes. You're the Megatron of our time. I appreciate it. Yeah. But because of that, we're a little out of whack here, but we're going to stick to the plan, kind of. We're going to be doing our Andor reviews, but also next week, we will be recording the Star Wars Rogue One in review. So stay tuned for that. Details will be out there on the Twitter, I'm sure, sooner than later. But anyways, that's not what we're talking about today. Today, we're talking about Star Wars Andor. The first 3 episodes dropped on Disney Plus at a beautiful time of midnight Pacific. Saige, I want to start with you. What did you think of Andor?
I'm really enjoying Andor so far. I'm so glad that they released these 3 episodes. If they had just released the first one, this would have been such a hard sell. I'm going to come in real hot here, and I'm going to say I'm not a big Rogue One fan. Rogue One is not my movie. I don't particularly enjoy it.
I finally found my people.
Yes! Okay, I really thought this was going to be a very controversial take. I'm so glad that I have a little backup here. I'm not a Rogue One fan. It's not for me. So coming in, I was just like, okay, I think this can be the thing, though, that makes me give a shit about Rogue One. And I want this to be the case, and so far, so good. But my question for you, Tim, is how do you feel about being the second Tim we'll talk about the most today?
Oh, dude. Hey, you know what I mean? He's Tim with 2 M's, but they're not where you think. It's a whole thing, okay? It's a whole thing.
Second most important Tim of this discussion.
I don't know which one's more of a Weasley punk, but you know, we'll have to have the cherries out.
There's some good ones. There's some good ones.
but yeah, give me more though, Saige. What were your thoughts overall on it compared to the other shows or anything?
I think it's been very interesting. They jumped in very quickly. It's been very connected episode to episode. Each one does not stand alone on their own, particularly like, oh, this is the episode where this happened, like most of the Star Wars content has been so far. I feel like when you're watching through Obi-Wan or a lot of these, you're like, oh, yes, this is the event of this episode. And these first 3 episodes were, I believe, one event. It was let's get to know what's going on here, the world and the time that we're set in, and the people that we're going with. And oh my God, Cassian's mom is so good.
And Petunia.
Marva's awesome.
Those are my initial thoughts. I think it's been really, really good so far. I think the setting is really excellent. I think it's looked beautiful. I think it's looked absolutely stunning. It's been very immersive and cool in that way. And oh my God, Cassian's mom.
Barrett, what'd you think?
Similar to Saige, not the biggest Rogue One fan. Talked about that on the first time we did Star Wars in review, all that stuff, and not to burn too much of the re-review that we'll do shortly, but a lot of my problems with that movie is it boils down to I think it would have been a better show. I really loved the premise, but I think there was so much to build up in that kind of premise. To boil it down into 2 hours like kind of frustrated me, and that's why I was excited for Andor as a series, because I felt going into it I was like, maybe this will deliver what I was kind of looking for and felt was lacking from the movie. And in these first 3 episodes, yes, it's already delivering that in spades. I kind of love just kind of not having a big event every single episode. It's like, yeah, they don't feel super distinct against each other's these first 3 episodes, but I like that because it feels like a fluid first act going into the next part of his adventure when they fly off planet, right? I love how Blade Runner-y it feels at the same time, while not feeling too far away from 70s kind of original Star Wars feeling as well. Especially when you think of Blade Runner, you think of cyberpunk kind of stuff. You think about the empirical forces that are like kind of oppressing people who are just on the street level. And I think for the show that has this premise of Andor, who is just this guy trying to survive, I think it nails that tone so well and brings that aesthetic in to kind of back that up and reinforce that in really cool ways. I love the cast. I love that they've set up these people who aren't super important in the grand scheme of the major Star Wars story, but they do such a good job of setting up the what I think is probably going to be the main antagonist. I just call him Nerd Cop. I forget his name, but that's who he is in my mind.
Corpo Dorks.
Yeah. Corpo Dorks. Setting him up, even setting up Tim with 2 M's, but not where you think they are. Hating that dude, liking him at first, and then being like, "What are you doing, you weird, jealous, toxic man situation here." I was really into it the entire time. The only note I have here, hold on, let me find it. Disney Plus, please stop releasing stuff at midnight. Please release at 9 p.m. That would be super sick, because I can't stay up until midnight anymore. I literally passed out right before 10, trying to stay up to at least watch 1 episode. Passed out, woke up at 11:55 and was like, okay, I'll just rest my eyes for a minute and then I'll get back in. And then woke up at 1:30 in the morning. I was like, all right, I just got to get up early and watch these 3 episodes. So please, Disney, think about it.
Think about the kids. Carboni, what'd you think?
This is really, we get a lot of Star Wars stuff that's marketed as this is going to be different. And, a lot of Star Wars stuff does have its own tone and its own themes and things like that. But this is the first show that I look at and I can see the showrunners and the creatives who are making it at work. You think about Tony Gilroy, who's written all of the Bourne movies, and also the seminal ice skating classic, The Cutting Edge. You didn't know that, did you?
Did not, no.
So Tony Gilroy, of course, is known for writing, intrigue, espionage, things like that. And then you've got Sana Wallenberg, who just came off of Chernobyl for HBO. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that HBO house style kind of rub off on this. The fact that these episodes they're sort of like, they leave you in an emotional place, but not a story place. That's sort of, it's not clean. It doesn't have a full arc. It feels very much like an HBO series to me. And I've really, really, really been loving it. You know, I think we've looked, this crew, we've all looked at every single Star Wars TV thing, and we've been like, is this the one where if I wasn't a Star Wars fan, would I be a Star Wars fan? And is it still Star Wars enough for Star Wars fans to like it? And I think this is the one where they're kind of threading that needle in a way they never have.
Yeah, I'm really interested. I gotta say, I'm not quite sold on being in love with this yet. I feel like maybe my hype for it got a little too high in the last couple weeks, seeing the trailers and like hearing people say like, yo, you don't need to be a Star Wars fan. This stands alone. This is more HBO than it is Disney Plus. And I feel like that level of excitement, I don't think these first 3 episodes quite hit for me. I want to be proven wrong over time. And I think that the show's definitely good. Like, I don't think there's anything that is bad about it. And I think that I'm having a good time watching it. And them having these 3 episodes gave us like, I think Carboni, you nailed it there. It's like less plot, more character, which I think is a strength of these type of shows so far, especially when we're getting into more obscure characters or characters that like I never really cared about, like Andor himself. Like I do like Rogue One quite a bit. I don't think it's perfect, but I was a fan of the movie overall. And going into this, I was like, I don't know that I really care too much about it, like in terms of a whole series based on Andor. But so far, the direction they're going, I'm like, all right, I see this, and I think that it's going to turn into something special if they use their time correctly. But the thing I guess I'm a little bit let down on is that I don't think that it stands by itself enough, and I don't think that it's for non-Star Wars fans like at all. Like the reviews that were like, yo, this is just a good show, period. So far, I don't think it's proven that. Like, this is one of those things where Gia gave up on Star Wars a couple shows ago, like a couple episodes into Boba Fett. She's like, you know what, Tim, you can do this alone. And I was like, that's totally
She didn't
fair.
like the flashback tank?
She didn't. There was the Bacta reference in this, though, instead of saying medic.
And there were several flashbacks, but with no tank, and it was very upsetting.
Yes, exactly. We
How
gotta
am I
figure
supposed
that out.
to know what's in the present and what's in the past?
Without
unless
no
it's
tank?
neon green.
Yeah, exactly. But I was telling her, I was like, oh, everyone's saying this might be the one. And she was like, watch it and let me know. And if you want to rewatch it, then we can see. I do not think I'm going to be telling her to watch this. Like, I think that it's just still a little bit too in the shit. And like, hey, I'm not complaining about, I'm in the shit too. So I'm there and I'm hopeful. But
do you just mean in terms of like feeling and looking like a Star Wars? Because you don't really need to have previous knowledge to come in. It's not one of those shows. It's not like we're not waiting for like, oh my God, Book of Boba Fett. I've been waiting for Boba Fett for 40 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be those tie-ins where you're waiting for a cameo or you need to understand why it is exciting to see a character in particular so far, which
Although
is really great.
We do know we're getting Saw Gerrera, who's my favorite character in Rogue One.
Well, it's not like, okay, well, let me take 15 minutes and explain Cad Bane to you, and then we'll,
Exactly. Yeah. Cad Bane with those lips. But no, you're absolutely right. And so far it is delivering on that. But I do think that the praise of like, oh, this is Star Wars like you've never seen it before. I'm not seeing that at all. It's like I'm seeing, oh, I've seen this before. And I what I am surprised about, and I don't even mean this as a bad thing, is that there was a lot more comedy in this, a lot more like lighthearted moments than I expected. And it is very sequel era comedy. Like a lot of the lines of like he tailored his own suit and like the custom design, like that feels exactly like Poe Dameron like prank calling the ship and things like that, which like it's a vibe, right? And it's like they've defined Star Wars now can also be that. So it's like we're seeing some of it, which I just didn't expect from this show. But yeah, I'm excited for more of it, and it having such a long runtime in terms of episodes, I think is gonna make this one just by default stand alone compared to the other ones where if we were watching any of the other shows, we would have been halfway in at this point and been like, well, how are they going to wrap this all up? But it really does feel like we haven't even started yet. And that excites me.
It's funny because like there was something about having this 2 seasons of 12 where all of a sudden they became, you can feel that no one was nervous and they just remembered how to pace things again.
Right.
I feel like this, we've talked about it a million times and I don't want to harp on it before we get too far into everything, but we've talked about how this 6-episode thing hurts more of these Disney Plus shows than it helps because everybody's always trying to find their pacing and tone. And I feel like there's something about this that just made everybody working on it feel like we know how to pace this. We know how it goes.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say is I am really excited to seeing every episode ending saying like written, directed by Tony, right? His name's Tony.
Tony Gilroy, yeah.
Tony Gilroy, where it's like, cool. I like when there's that consistent vision and kind of like these people are working on this. And I don't know if he's doing the entire rest of the season, but the fact that this 3-episode arc was presented the way it was, I thought there was a lot of tonal consistency. And that is like, you'd hope the bare minimum for these type of shows, but
it's like when Breaking Bad
that's not
ends
the case.
and you see that like created by Vince Gilligan kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You feel that.
Yeah. I feel like they opened the show in a very interesting way. And I think that a lot of the reference of like, this is like an HBO show is coming from people seeing the opening of the show, like with some rather serious like violence, which like, you know, I put the like quotation marks because it's a Star Wars level of violence, but they really do have those a couple of immediate moments of like, this isn't for babies. This is not your, you know, Clone Wars for your baby kids. Like we're doing death in this. People die on screen.
We've got the implication of potentially sex workers.
Someone
Maybe.
And
takes
even
the
the
jacket off.
implication of sex
Yeah.
in general.
Maybe.
The sexy, what I do
Maybe.
love, God, I don't know if we're getting too far ahead of ourselves, but one moment that I do love is when they're trying to do like the sexiest sexy time that you know, the HBO shows are always like, you know, 10 minutes in, we got to have something shocking and we got to have something sexy. And the sexiest thing they had was Bix removing her jacket to have a full outfit underneath. And like that was the version of a Star Wars sex scene, was just like, whoa, she took off her jacket. No one takes off their jacket.
Yeah. And like people die in Star Wars, but most commonly, people that they are able to dehumanize, like stormtroopers die and people don't think anything of it, or people die heroically in Star Wars. People
Rarely
die,
with blow darts,
but it's like a moment, right? And like the blow darts, and then also like there's the lasers, but it's the immediate killing of like a corpo. You know what I mean? That like opening kill where he's like, you killed him. No, he's not breathing. You killed him.
He didn't even mean to kill him, too.
Right.
Exactly. So
it's a
that
very
like
non-Star Wars
kind
thing.
of death is not a Star Wars thing, and the way that he has to process that, and it was performed by our hero, which is also very interesting. And it's not like, oh, you killed the big bad, like we've all been rooting for. This was a guy, and nobody liked him, but like, damn, like all of their reactions are kind of the reaction I was having, where they're like, oh, you killed him? Shit, like okay.
Seems like a lot, bud.
Wow.
Yeah. And also, it is cool seeing him like do this when we see his opening scene in Rogue One, right? Where like he does a very similar thing, but when we see it in Rogue One, which is later than this, it's a choice, and like he's like he doesn't give a shit, right? So it's like I do like seeing the kind of back and forth. And to your point, Saige, about this being a little bit more grown up feeling as opposed to specifically the cartoons, the animated Star Wars universe. Like it, even besides the violence and like the sex, just talking about boyfriends, girlfriends, like relationships between people, like that doesn't feel Star Wars. Like there's been moments we've seen it before, but I like that this show speaks differently. Like I like that this show kind of allows people to be people.
Yeah, we have constantly star-crossed lovers in Star Wars. That's what Star Wars does. The princess and the scoundrel and the senator and the Jedi and like all these, we love each other and we can never be, but maybe we will be. I don't like very like that kind of stuff.
And the next time you see them, she'll be pregnant.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
This is like, are you screwing this guy from work? And it's like, well, maybe. I don't know if it's a thing. And you're just like, Star Wars. Please.
Star Wars, goodness.
Please.
Real quick, I want to keep talking about this, but first, let's take a word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. We've all heard of gut instinct, but have you ever heard of butt instinct? It's when your butt tells you it wants new undies. Listen to your butt. Luckily, we work with MeUndies, makers of the most buttery, soft, and sustainable undies, bralettes, and socks that exist. You know that I have lived my life MeUndies head to toe for the majority of the last couple years. I'm just all in on MeUndies because they are absolutely the most comfortable clothes I've ever put on my body. Available in sizes extra small to 4XL. They have new colors and prints dropping weekly, so there's always something exciting to check out. You can try their free to join membership for free shipping on every order and exclusive perks, like an item shipped to your door every month, secret sales, and early access to their newest stuff. MeUndies has a great offer for you guys out there. For any first-time purchasers, you get 20% off plus free shipping and returns. To get 20% off your first order, free shipping, and 100% satisfaction guarantee, go to MeUndies.com/kindafunny. That's MeUndies.com/kindafunny. Shout out to Shopify for sponsoring this episode. Shopify powers our very own KindaFunny.com/store, our merch store. And we love how Shopify has the tools and resources that make it easy for any business to succeed from down the street to around the globe. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere. Shopify unlocks the opportunity of your business to more people every day. Every 28 seconds, an entrepreneur like you makes their first sale on Shopify. Shopify powers millions of businesses from first sale to full scale. You can reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps. It's more than a store. Shopify grows with you. You can go to shopify.com/KFgames, all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. Go to shopify.com/KFgames right now. That's shopify.com/KFgames, all lowercase. One thing I wanted to bring up that I really enjoyed is how much Final Fantasy VII vibes I'm getting from some of the planets and cities that we got going on here. And I do like that the main planet that we've been on, I forget the name of it. I think it starts with the K. Phoenix. That's what it was. Ferrix. It feels lived in. You know, it feels like this is a world that we can believe. We see people doing the mining jobs, which, by the way, I love that they're just treating like the Empire, just using like, oh yeah, it was a terrible mining accident. That's just their go-to to like cover shit up. Like that's the same thing they said about Jeddah in Rogue One. It's like, I like that that's kind of becoming a thing for them to go back to. But I really liked the worlds that we've seen so far and how they're familiar but different, right? It's not like it's things and locations. I mean, they technically are places we haven't seen before. They don't feel that different than things we've seen before, but they feel real. And it's not just a desert planet again, which is always nice.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I am a big fan. You know that I'm obsessed with the volume, which is the LED dome, the way that they've been doing all of these shows. I think it's really wonderful, but we've talked before about how there are certain shots and certain things that technology just can't do for you. And one of the things that we talked about is, a filmic look as far as like shallow depth of field. There's no way to pull a depth of field for a background that's flat, right? It's essentially a painting, no matter how much it's moving. And I think the fact that Tony Gilroy and Sana Wallenberg really said, if we do this, we want to build 2 full city blocks of this town, and we want to get people running around in there, and we want to do this, properly. There are volume shots in there mixed in, but they built an even bigger set than I think Boba Fett did, and Boba Fett had some practical stuff too. And I think that really helps for the lived-in look. Of course, it also really helps that the production design is so on point. The color themes and the way things look, and you can just tell what sort of a job a character has or who their alliances are just based on kind of like the color palette without it being like wearing a big badge of like, I'm good guy. You know what I mean? You just sort of get a vibe from everybody in the city. And I think the production design just did a great job with that.
A question about the production design there and like the costuming specifically. Like we see the kind of like construction workers or whatever you want to call them, and like I feel like a lot of their outfits have that Rebel Alliance color scheme and like even vibe of like the orange and the tan, I guess it's called. But even seeing like Tim with 2 M's, not what you think, like his little helmet, like it looked like the Rebel helmets, and I was like, what are they trying to like? Are they really going events like this is the origin of the Alliance? It's like, that's kind of weird.
They've always said that they don't, the Rebel Alliance doesn't have money, right? The Empire has money. And so if the Rebel Alliance has money, then, or the Rebel Alliance doesn't have money, then where do you find your protective gear, your helmets, your work gear, your things that are going to protect you from the environment when you're in battle? A lot of that stuff probably comes from working class stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff that we're seeing now, a lot of these, these factories that are making these things, there are corporation names within Star Wars. People like the X-Wing is made by Incom. And a lot of these companies are going to, just like any other galaxy or any other planet, country in wartime, they'll probably turn to wartime production, right? So the same company that makes your workers' hard hats and your vests is going to turn into the company that makes your flight suits and your flight helmets during the war.
Yeah,
Makes
that makes
sense.
perfect sense to me.
Smart people.
In no way would I ever allow anyone for even a second to believe that Tim with two M's, not where you think, has anything to do with the rebellion.
Oh,
Has
definitely
ever
not.
done a single good thing in his life.
I will
That
say his
guy.
whole plan of action, not the best. You know what I mean?
No.
It's like, and pretty much anyway, but specifically like his last living moments, it was like, all right, bro.
Here's the thing, but of course. And I think that that was well done because he's garbage. He's the most boring man in the galaxy.
Yeah.
He's the most boring man we have ever seen
I
in
love his
Star
name's
Wars.
just
Everything
Tim.
about him. He's just Tim.
Yeah.
He's
And like,
just
no
Tim.
offense, man, but if you were in Star Wars, we wouldn't consider you to have an exciting name.
He's such a non like main character in that he's just like your very average, slightly hides well that he's got a little toxic masculinity going on there with his
Does not
like
hide it
getting
well.
drunk and being jealous that his girlfriend is like
Yeah, man.
hanging out with Cassian and stuff like that. And
Not his
because of
girlfriend.
jealous-
She says she's not his girlfriend.
Okay, well, fuck buddy, whatever you want to call it in
Radiating
Star
off
Wars.
him from a mile away.
And so, like, you have that going on, and then he's just like, well, I'm going to call the nerd cops and narc on Andor, which...
Nothing can go wrong
he's-
if I narc.
Yeah.
He's being a dork the entire time. And from the second he enters the screen, I don't know if I was as aware of how much of a look there is to Star Wars humans until he entered the screen. And I was like, it's not that. That's not what Star Wars humans look like. That is not correct. This is a dude. And he just wandered
He's
onto the
just a dude.
fucking set. Like, he's just a dude. He wandered on here and they put a silly little cap on him. That's it.
Saige and I were like, his name is just Tim. And like,
He's
we
just
didn't, and we were
Tim?
like, are we able to, I don't want to make fun of Tim Geddes
Oh no, I
Because-
get it though.
because
I get
Tim
it.
is a perfectly good, normal human name.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
if a guy shows up in Star Wars and his, like, everyone around him is Bix and Cassian Andor, with the exception of maybe a Luke, but Luke's last name is Skywalker. Like,
Right.
you can't just be
Nah,
Tim.
just Tim.
If
Just
you
Tim.
show up and you're Tim,
But the
I
thing
don't
is,
fucking
he's not
trust
just
you.
Tim. Like they made the choice to give him two M's. Like they knew how
Yeah.
stupid it was.
Well, he's
It's
got to be
so
Space
stupid.
Tim.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. The space is the
Yes.
second M. But like,
exactly.
when you see him watching, and I'm just going to jump to this
Hey, that
specific
second M
scene
is
because
for
we're going to
space.
write this man off and never talk about him again. When you see him watching, the two of them interact. And he's like, I'm going to get drunk over this and all these things. I'm like, dude, nothing happened. Like, it is such a bananas scene to watch. And I also understand that, like, we've all met this man, but, like, I don't want him in my Star Wars. I don't want these men around. I just can't imagine why he's there. He is such an unnecessary character. He's just there to narc. I think we could have had anybody else narc. He just shows up, acts like a little piss baby about his wannabe girlfriend that doesn't even want to call herself his girlfriend. And then he's just like,
I
You
swear,
touched
I
wrists.
swear, he showed up, and I thought he was like one of those characters that's going to be like, "Hey, just got a letter for you," you know what I mean? And then like walk away. So in that way, they did a really, really wonderful job with Tim.
Yeah.
We were all like, "What is this guy doing here?" And he is the worst. And one of the things that I really love is we get to watch Tim get his comeuppance.
yeah.
Oh, I just
God, I'm so
I
glad
just
he's
called
wrecked.
the corporate cops on everyone because I got mad. Are you saying that makes me wrong? Yeah,
They
Tim.
touched hands, Anthony. That's as
Not even
scandalous
hands.
as sex in the Star Wars universe.
Not
gets.
even hands.
And-
She doesn't take off her jacket for anybody but Tim. I don't know why he's
No.
getting mad.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I want to move
Hicks
on
is awesome,
to
though.
the other nerd in the show, and we gotta talk about Nerd Cop. And I don't have any character name other than Cassian in my notes. So
Boo.
if you,
Yeah,
it
what
was
is his name?
Nerd Cop is Cyril Karn.
Cyril
Yeah.
Karn. And this is a quick note here, and this
A
is something
great
I
name.
actually appreciated. It was hard for me to understand a lot of the show because a lot of people, other than what's his name, Nerd Cop.
Cyril Karn.
Cyril Karn has like a very particular accent, and it's like a detail that I love, that it's like these people who are
Space
local to
British.
this place, and he is
Yeah.
very much obviously like not from here, and the way he acts towards and decides to handle these situations, even his like superior officer who's like gonna like go off and do something for a couple of days, like going against like how he wants to handle situations. I liked that little detail that he was like kind of like even his voice like kind of solidified of like his relation to this entire system.
He tailored his dungarees. Like,
Yeah.
I know you consider
respect
that
it.
like a big goof, Tim, but like it also is so indicative of the character. I would not be shocked if we find out later on in the series that he washed out of the Imperial Academy.
Oh, so and that I have so many.
He totally
thoughts.
feels like
Yeah.
he wanted to be a military hero and he just wasn't good enough for whatever reason. He fell short, wound up working for the Space Corpo cops, getting paid to be a security guard, and takes his job way too seriously.
See, I
Which
think
they show us so quickly.
Yeah, like the way he glommed onto Mosk. Mosk is the round piss baby.
The real QAnon.
The real Scottish
they're
QAnon
Michael
boy.
Scott and Dwight, dude. That's all
They
I can
really
think
are.
about.
the
with
first
these
man
two
to
names.
ever,
each
the
other.
first man to ever say shit in Star Wars, possibly.
Boom. We made it, everybody.
We did it.
But yeah, seeing the way he immediately like grabbed on to Mosk being like, no, you're absolutely right. This is, and Mosk is clear, like you're saying, he's Dwight Schrute. He's like, we've got to start a militia at the mini mall. Who will protect, who's going to protect Auntie Annie's cookies if we don't start a militia at the mini mall? It's like,
Yeah.
fucking calm
And
down,
like,
dude.
I'm gonna be honest, and maybe I'll regret this comment later, but I feel like they knew what they were doing when they made the actor who plays Nerd Cop #1, like made him look a little bit like Ben Shapiro a little bit. So I think it was in episode 3 where I kind of put that together. I was like, oh yeah, he's just major dork who just like really doesn't understand like the struggles of actual people, and just once like his speech at the end of the second episode where it's like a hollow speech about justice and like not completely talking out of his ass, which was like so fantastic.
These dudes-
There's nobody I would rather chase down working class men with than you all.
And the thing is, these dudes are looking at him like, I don't know, is there cake in the break room later? Like, these are jobbers, man. Like, they don't care. Like, it's fucking wild to me. And I love that disconnect from him and the fact that he had no idea what he was getting into and how shell-shocked he got and how quickly he backed down when he was actually in it. And you were just like, Star Wars has a beautiful history of sniveling dudes who think that they're tougher than they are.
Yeah.
And boy, Cyril Karn is one of the best.
And my thing is, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think he's going to rise in the ranks of the Imperial force and not just the mall cops kind of situation. Because I have an idea of where the show is going, right? We know that across these 2 seasons, it's going to kind of jump throughout 5 years and stuff like that. I forget how much time this first season is spanning. And Cassian's going to do the job that we knew him to do in the Rebellion, right? He's going to do some espionage spy shit. And I think the reason why we're introduced to this character so early on as this early antagonist is because he's going to be important when we do a time jump when Cassian's like trying to infiltrate the Empire, and he's also there. And I think he'll probably be picked out by a superior officer who recognizes that he totally blew up that situation in not a great way, but sees like this character reminded me of just like a Thrawn with no swagger and not the same level of strategic thinking that Thrawn has.
I think it's fair to say he's not as strategic as a Thrawn. Yeah.
Yes.
They also, look, it's important
short.
to remind us that not all villains have to be sexy.
Right.
And they did a
We
great
needed a
job in this
reminder.
series by saying, hey, you don't have to want to sleep with all the villains.
Yeah. And
Were y'all also thinking that he would make, in addition to this, he'd make a great elf on the Lord of the Rings show?
He looks pretty elfy, yeah.
He has a bit of that look to him.
I think he looked like a casting, like a Ryan Murphy casting. I think he looks like somebody that would have been on Glee.
Yeah.
Mm.
He looks a bit
giving
like
Glee
an
Club.
American Horror Story kind of, he's got that look to him. I could see that happening though, Barrett. I could see that being the day that he screws up, and so he thinks to himself, "I will never screw up again."
Yeah, that's exactly what my thought was.
Uses that as his like impetus to just turn into a total pawn of the system.
But also to like kind
Brawn
of
pawn.
to kind of learn his mistake, and like his superior officer told him to like balance it out of like have it be this accident but not too tragic, not anything that's going to get attention. And then he does the complete opposite, where like his arc is going to be kind of learning how to weave that thread a little bit.
Yeah,
and I think that'll be a really, if that's where they're going with him in the way that I'm thinking, he's going to be a really fascinating antagonist against Andor, I believe.
one of those
Yeah, I
characters
liked
where
him a
by
lot.
the end, you're like watching the last episode of the second season. You're like, holy shit, remember how that guy started? I totally forgot, like one of
Yeah.
those things.
I hope so. I really hope so, because like I'm feeling it so far, but I do feel it's a little surface level and on the nose of like it
I
is
hope he gets a
literally just
wedgie.
the things that we're talking about of like, yeah, like, hey, he's in over his head and he is this proud boy bullshit, all that stuff. But it's like I feel like we've seen a lot of stories like that recently, and like I
Mhm.
want them to do it like do something new, like give it some twist. So that's why I'm hoping, like with what Barrett's saying, I think you could be right, and like that could be an interesting take on it. But like I want them to get there, because I do feel like so far the show's reminding me a little more of Halo on Paramount Plus than it is of an HBO show. And I
Whoa,
think
you watched Halo?
I did.
You're the only
did.
one.
I did, yeah. And I'm getting a lot of vibes
Wow.
of that in this so far. And that show had some good things to offer, but it also had a lot of like, all right, been there, done that generic sci-fi stuff. And
Mhm.
that I feel like we're still a little stuck here in that vibe than like, oh, this is like this is new sci-fi. This is something fresh.
Mhm.
This is Star Wars like we've never seen it before. And I think the bad guys to me are a big part of that so far, where it's like, yeah,
Well-
this is kind of an archetype we've seen before. And I think even in modern media, we've seen a lot of this take. But I think that they've, again, done a good job setting it up that this guy's going to be involved. We're going to get a lot more of him. And like how getting him out of the mall cop thing, I think is going to give him a little bit more room to like have a unique identity.
And getting Cassian out of the local stuff and into the spy thing, I think is also going to help with that.
Well,
as
I think that's a really important thing that you're bringing up, Barrett, is like Saige and I, when we were watching, talked about the idea that like Tim feels like a small town boyfriend who's dating the coolest girl, and so is trying to really like keep a hold of her, right? And like these corporate cops, they're you're talking about these security forces, that they feel like these cops that are hired by like suburban neighborhoods that just drive around pushing around teens and things like that. So you really do feel like Cassian is kind of like a 2-bit criminal in a small 2-bit town, right? And I think that's why, even though there's Star Wars technology there's a guy who like is very proud of the fact that he hammers the bell every morning to get everybody up.
Love that.
You know what I mean?
It's great. I love him.
He's so into it.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Because
so
you
I
brought
think
Tim
getting
back
out
up.
of
Go ahead.
I was just saying that I think that because of that, we were supposed to show, Cassian has run out of friends. He's run out of every chance that he has on this little backwater, whatever. And so now he's got to go out into the bigger galaxy. And I think that is when things are going to get really interesting.
Yeah. Even in episode 1, they do a really good job of making the ground kind of collapse underneath his feet, like very, very early on, just to and then to slowly see that over the following 2 episodes, I thought was awesome.
Sage, you wanted to go back to
anything the way that
Tim.
hammer guy loves
I
his
promise.
hammers.
It's the last time we're going to go back to Tim. But I realized that I wanted to read you, and I'm going to screen some of the profanity out of my notes here about this. But it says, Tim is such a weirdo. I don't like him. All she was doing was talking to someone. You goddamn weirdo. Why are you watching her sleep? Is what I wrote down.
Yeah.
Watching her sleep. That's right. I
We
forgot.
didn't talk about the scene where she wakes up and he's sitting there like.
Didn't like that.
It's just like, if I
She
just
asks him, he's like, I couldn't sleep. And it's like, so that's what you decided to do?
So that's what you did? So that was the only other option? But also, that isn't relevant. Like, I get that they were showing us more that he's a weirdo, but like, he's about to die. Like the next time we see him, pretty much, he's going to get called out for what he did and then die. Why was that scene even there? We get it. He's a weird little narc. He's a weird little narc. So odd. I watched that scene and I was just like, why? For what?
Yeah.
Dudes are weird, Sage. I didn't know if you knew that, but dudes are weird.
I liked how weird they made him and then killed him off because he continued to be a weird dude who felt like he needed to be the hero.
Yeah.
It
was
it's funny if
satisfying
you
to kill
think of
that
it. If you think of it as like coming from people that have worked on a lot of HBO shows, and like you think about how over the top like creepy moments are in like some of those shows, or even like, you think about like some network shows like your Breaking Bads and stuff like that, where it's like, ew, creepy. And it's funny because like they do still have to be Disney Plus and Star Wars, which is why it's fun to watch this and see how much like they can get like an HBO show. Because the creepiest they could get is he's just going to sit there. And it's really weird. It's really weird. We wanted to do something even creepier, but we couldn't.
Guys, palate cleanse. We haven't talked about B2 Emo yet.
We haven't.
Oh, listen, when in the Rise of Skywalker, Dio speaks, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, "Astromechs don't talk." I was like, "Whoa, Astromechs don't talk." I was like,
pushed up his glasses first.
I did. I got out my opera glasses that I had rented, and I pushed them up. But after I got over that initial shock, I was like, Dio's very cute and sweet.
No, thank you.
B2 emo. B2 emo. The saddest of the droids.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's literally, it's Saige if Saige was a droid. It's just a little red droid that's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Just really concerned about Cassian, loves him a lot.
Yeah, just concerned about their friends.
And then you realize like why Cassian likes to be the one to keep around K2SO, because he loves his sassy talking droids.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a hot take, I think. So far,
push you into this.
Don't say it.
Too emo, not for me. I feel like the thing is, we can't just be like, oh, there's a new droid, we gotta love the droid. We gotta be critical of our new droids being entered into our life. And is this new, or is this just Wall-E mixed with Bumblebee from the Transformers movies? And I'm like, you know what? That's a combo that I don't think I need. I don't think I need it. Do I like the Saige-like qualities of this thing? Yes, I do. I'm not trying to take that away. But you like me, and my name's Tim, okay? So it's like, I feel like we get the tit for tat there a little bit. But yeah, so far, I feel like it's a little derivative, and I'm not getting the love vibes from my boy B.
I love him, and I would kill everyone in this room and then myself for him.
Yeah. I get it. It's the difference.
Remember when he shocked the little pig when it peed on him?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
It was great.
I'll tell you this.
I did feel like there were parts that weren't derivative.
Yeah, she's go ahead.
I don't feel like it was entirely derivative. I do feel like for especially a Star Wars droid, and we're looking at the Star Wars franchise where they have a million personalities of different droids that we've met now. I do feel like it was original in the sense of it wasn't like I make sassy quips. It was so genuine, and that's what it is for me. It was the heart of this droid not being like I'm just a delicate flower that you want to protect at all costs, and not being like I'm the tough guy that's going to protect everybody. It was just this like he's kind of just a little guy.
Yeah. Acted very much like a younger brother. And it was like he was looking at the droid. It's like, hey, do you remember what we're doing? We're leaving money for Marva. Okay. And we don't touch it till you know what I mean? It's like, I can lie if you want. I have enough power. And it's just like, you can hear this little droid being like, I don't like to lie,
And like even later on when he's doing when he's figuring out the comms and stuff, and he's like, can I just go with you and stuff like that? And you just like, oh,
yeah. You're right. You should probably, it's like, yeah, nobody should touch the money but me. You're right. You just shouldn't leave then. Like, it's just very like little brother vibes. And I thought that was very cute. So I guess, why do you hate Star Wars?
Yeah.
That's what the kids are going to say. That's what they're going to say. Man. And I'm okay with that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, I don't even know what I was going to say. Oh. Sorry, I got hit by a truck. Go on.
We haven't talked enough about, I think, Cassian, the flashbacks that weren't in Back to Tanks, and the kind of like introduction to the relationship between him and Marva, which was kind of threaded throughout the first 3 episodes.
Casa, yeah. His name is Casa.
Yeah, so
it was very interesting. The planet that they showed, I think, was really, really fascinating. I think that the child-run civilization was very, very interesting, and I want to know so much more about that. I found that so fascinating. I don't want a whole show about it because I don't like watching children that much, but I do want to know so much more about these people that he comes from. And I think it was very interesting. I think they did a very good job of communicating it without us knowing the language. Anthony and I were talking about it at the time because we watched this together, and it was like, oh, they're not subtitling this, which means they're entirely relying on us understanding body language and the way that they're communicating with each other without, and it could be, I mean, we're going to assume it's a stylistic and artistic choice to be like, no, you're just going to understand by these kids like gestures and movements that they care about each other and what the structure and the power is here.
Yeah.
But also then they didn't have to translate the whole new Star Wars language.
Yeah. I think it's like they also don't want to give too much away, right? So I think it works because it's like you don't know who these kids are. You feel for them because they're kids living in the woods. You don't know what they're doing, and you don't know what they're saying because like they don't want you to know too much about Kenari and what happened on Kenari just yet. But we know that these kids were left without anybody. We know the Empire says it was just a mining accident. We don't know what happened there. And we also know that these kids with their little Lord of the Flies like society, where they're wearing like cut up mining and like flight suits and stuff. It was really wild. And it's another one of those bits, those flashbacks, where we got one of those moments that like, look, the whole reason Star Wars happens is because a lot of kids die. But this is the first time, like, I felt like someone really, like, they showed somebody really killing a kid there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like saber fires and we cut away, or there's a saber hits somebody who's CG, who's CG and falls back.
She doesn't really see it coming for the most part. It's kind of out of cold blood. And then you have to sit, I don't think it's in the same sequence, but then when you come back, you have to sit with the rest of their reaction to her death as well.
Mm-hmm.
And to Saige's point too about the just like the kids and like the how good of a job they did of building like their narrative and all that stuff. Like I loved seeing young Cassian kind of like taking it all in, and they sat on that actor for a long time of just letting us see his facial reactions to everything. And it was like, oh shit, okay, like he's learning things and he's experiencing some of this and seeing so much for the very first time. So that when we end episode 3 and we get those like the back and forth cuts between him in modern times leaving the planet and him before, like potentially in a ship leaving for the first time, I was like, this is really, really cool. And I feel like a really well-earned moment because we sat in those flashbacks for so long.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job of also like showing and not telling what kind of happened here and giving you enough to put the pieces together. In a moment where we don't see a lot of Star Wars is when the Empire abandons a planet after they've taken it over and after they're trying to mine it for this their resources. Like we see that in some of the other shows. We see that in the video games. I think one place that really showcases it well in the moment, thinking about it on the ground level from the local perspective, is the Ahsoka book that is kind of takes place I think like a year after episode 3 when she's in hiding. And they even talk about that of like the kind of the input versus the output from like the Empire perspective of like, if it's worth it, if there's an uprising here, like, should we just abandon this project and stuff like that? And you really see the aftermath here where it's like, where you get that shot of him looking at the mine, right? And then there's like I think it's the line where it's like, oh, a big mining accident happened there. And you kind of put together of like, oh, fuck, the reason they're in the Lord of the Flies situation is like, because they're all local kids and their parents all died in this accident, probably uprising, who knows? And I just thought that was really, really well done. And I was impressed of like, you know, I wasn't rolling my eyes every time we went to back to a flashback because I thought it was done very well. And it wasn't in a back to tank every time.
The brutality, I think, was also highlighted in the thing that did immediately follow the blaster to the back and that like teenage girl, is it wasn't then stopped. He then realized, I just shot a kid, 100% had the time to process it, and then turned around and continued to fire at the rest of the small children up there. And I think that there is a level of like that having been an older enough kid that you're like, ooh, that was brutal. But then you just see him start firing at small children immediately after. Like he doubles down on that choice. When you didn't have to, which I think, again, like really pushed us into what the brutality of this is and who Cassian ended up being. It also makes sense. I mean, he talks about in Rogue One, the like, I've been in this fight since I was 6. Like, welcome. This is it. This is life.
Yeah.
And that's the moment that hits it.
So everybody runs away and he sticks around and goes into this ship, which I believe is a Confederacy ship. Like they're not wearing like the technology looks Imperial, but they don't look Imperial. I think it's a Confederacy ship. But
they were all yellow.
They were all but see Cassian go in there and you get an idea of like how long these kids have been alone, because Cassian's never seen a mirror. Cassian's never seen a computer. Cassian's never seen any of this stuff. And it's wild to see it happen. And that's when we meet Marva and Clem, who, listen, I love Marva so much.
Same.
Marva just freaking rules so much.
I like the relationship. This was like the kind of one thing where I was like, I wanted more of in these first 3 episodes, especially now that it seems like we're going to go off on an adventure, and I'm sure we're going to get more flashbacks with her and stuff like that. And so I felt a little wanting in kind of building the relationship more in these first 3 episodes. Especially when, like, kind of in that reveal I think it's the 3rd episode, where it's kind of cutting back and forth and stuff, and you see that she was the one who took him off planet, which causes him to, we assume, to never see his sister again. If that's what we're assuming from the very beginning of the first episode, that's what he says he's there to do, is he's looking for his sister, and he heard of this woman who was from the same planet as him, in hopes that might have been her, or maybe it's, someone who knows something about his sister, right? And I want them to dive deeper into that, of like kind of that effect on him, of like kind of forcefully being dragged away. And I liked how that mirrored in the 3rd episode, and the reason why they were cutting back and forth of it, right, where you see the shot of him kind of looking out to space, being driven by Skarsgård, and then coming back to him as a kid being driven by Marva, where he's now in another situation where he's being dragged into he's being taken somewhere where he has no idea what's really in store from him, and he's also being taken away from a lot of people he cares about. And I thought that was really, really cool and interesting.
Yeah.
I hope they flesh it out a little more.
Yeah, I like the Marva stuff because, number one, Fiona Shaw just rips. Like, she just rips. Okay?
Every scene she's in makes the other person in the scene better.
It's true. Everybody is better when they're up. Like, there's a marked difference in everyone's acting quality in these episodes when they're up against Fiona Shaw. But the other reason that I like Marva is because even though we're seeing this sweet old, like, hey, I'm your mom, you're my son, that's the way we've always played it, and that's the way we've always been, Cassian is very clearly aware that he was taken by her. She sees it as saving him because she knew that the Imperials were coming, or that the Confederacy was coming. And he sees it as, no, I didn't understand what was going on, and you took me.
He was kidnapped.
He was kidnapped. He was literally kidnapped. And so I'm interested in how that relationship is going to deepen, because we saw Marva kind of like giving Cassian as much space as he wants to kind of fuck up, which is a very like step parent or adoptive parent thing, which is like, I don't want to tighten my control over you too hard because I know that you don't think of me as your actual parent. But also, like, she is a badass spy, and or a scavenger or whatever. And the second, a smuggler, and the second he starts tripping up, she starts going, here's what's going to happen, and here's what's going to happen, and here's what's going to happen, and you have to stop fucking up now. And that was kind of cool to see. So I think there are some layers between the two of them that are going to get really interesting.
Yeah.
Another character I'm really interested in seeing the growth of is the Skarsgård character. Like, I liked being able to sit with him a lot longer than I even kind of expected in the like kind of like prelude to him meeting Andor, where it's like we see him on this like weird little bus, and there's that other old guy talking to him, and like it's just having a normal ass conversation of like, oh, back in my day we could just drive straight through the wasteland, like. And I was like, this is kind of, there's a novelty to this that I enjoy.
He's wearing a real little old man hat too.
Yeah,
it wasn't even like a space hat.
Yeah.
He was wearing like a little trilby.
Yeah, he just walked onto set. They started shooting the scene, and the director was like, "Did he get through makeup and wardrobe?" And they're like, "No, he totally skipped us."
No, he showed up like that. We found him in the park.
I like the setup a lot, and then once we got him with Andor, I thought that conversation was a lot of fun and setting up a really cool action scene, which honestly we haven't gotten much of in these Disney Star Wars shows. I feel like a lot of times we're looking at it, and it's like there was that chase that never ended in Boba Fett, but like there are moments where it's like, oh, that action scene was cool, or this one was cool, or whatever. Some of the Mandalorian stuff definitely, like that one episode with Ahsoka, was really cool. But for this, I appreciated the more like kind of they treated it like it was Born Identity more than they did a Star Wars thing, where we get this like multi-level arena, and we get the guys with the blasters like shooting down at them, and then there's all the big metal things that can fall. It was like, this is just such a great like action set piece room. Like, it felt very video game Last of Us, of like, we're in the monster closet, deal with it.
I literally said to Saige, I was like, I solved this puzzle in Spider-Man.
straight up. Yeah, it's like, that's what it felt like.
I switched these trains around, but I mean, like, that's what you get when you have Tony Gilroy, who's been writing Bourne movies for Doug Liman, and is just like, here's how you make an action sequence. And there was a lot of tension to that room, and there was also a lot of tension to Luthen himself. You know, the whole time I was waiting for Luthen to pull out that staff and do some like real damage with that staff.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that would have been sick.
We still haven't even seen the staff yet. Because it's interesting seeing a character in Star Wars that has a staff, is carrying a weapon from go, but chooses to just be like spycraft about it.
Mm-hmm. That was very cool.
Yeah, Luthen had the whole thing wired from moment one. He's like,
dude, rule number one, rule number two. I am a sucker for that type of shitty dialogue.
Rule number two, make your exit when you enter.
On the way in?
Yeah.
Come on, let's go.
We will find out later, I'm sure, that because we know from Rogue One that Cassian's relationship to the rebellion is like, don't think the rebellion are the heroes. We get our hands dirty. We do shit just like everybody else does. I think Luthen held him there in that shed, knowing that somebody was going to come and he would be forced to escape with Luthen. Luthen didn't come for the Starfinder or whatever. He came to get Cassian. And so I think he orchestrated that whole thing.
Oh, 100%. Especially when he's
just Thor's goofy friend.
He's just a goofy friend.
Who knew?
And he's literally like, Cassian is like, he's in an interview for a job and he doesn't even realize it, where, you know, he's asking like Cassian, like, how did you get this piece? And he like goes into detail of like how he snuck in. He infiltrated the Empire, and it's easy because they wouldn't expect someone like him to be able to infiltrate that level of stuff because they're fat and they're proud and all of this. And like, it was that moment where you're like, yeah, you just signed up for a job that you didn't realize you fit the bill for 100%, but you have the job, buddy. That's the rest of the show.
I think about it like cool. Victorian. I think about it like Victorian England, where it's like, you know, you think something like, you know, where it's like, oh, Jack the Ripper probably can't be somebody who's like high class and high society, because high class, high society people don't do crimes and aren't able to do that. We're just not built that way. And so I think of the Empire as just being like, oh, but we're perfect and we're wonderful. And we do, you know, nothing bad will happen, and nobody from, you know, and you can just walk right in because it's like very classist and weird. And so they just get it. Like, I love the explanation of that. It's like, just walk in like you know what you're doing. Nobody will ask you anything. Because there's also, I think, a fear when you work. We've seen that too. There's a fear when you work for the Empire that's just like, I'm going to mind my own business, because if that guy's fucking up, I don't want to be within 15 feet of him.
Yeah.
Just following orders.
Any final thoughts on episodes 1 through 3, Saige?
I enjoyed these 3 episodes more than I enjoyed Rogue One ever, by like pretty good leaps and bounds. I think that they've been really, really fun. I think that this is an interesting, I mean, humanizing is a strange term to use for like literal aliens, but this is the most grounded and humanizing show for Star Wars yet. And I think that it isn't the show for me for like non-Star Wars fans necessarily, but it does feel incredibly different because Boba Fett and The Mandalorian were so connected, and Obi-Wan was connected to the prequels. Even though this has obviously an incredibly important place in Star Wars history for Rogue One and into the originals, it feels like an individual story about real people and not about legends, which I think is very cool.
Carboni?
Yeah, agreed. I could go without seeing very much Empire in this at all. I could go with there being a lot of these cops from Ferrix. I could go with there being like a lot of these private corporations. I would like this to be the series that it seems like it's going to be, which is the story that tells us about what people have been doing on the ground the whole time, while the people who've been flying X-Wings and swinging lightsabers have been doing stuff. And I think that's something a lot of Star Wars fans have been asking for. And I think they've done this in a really wonderful way where you don't sit there waiting for the cameo. You know what I mean? I was never waiting for the cameo in this, and they could keep going this way, and I could feel that way. And I think that's the way that you build Star Wars for the next 40 years. And so I really love this. And I do love that it makes me laugh, but I also do love their hilarious, like, we're almost like, we're getting grown up. These two are gonna hold hands. Like, I love that they're like they are. Like, they said a swear, like they are kind of being more adult and a little darker and a little more serious, which I think will appeal to a larger audience, but without getting rid of everything that makes Star Wars to me. I really enjoyed this. I mean, an extremely, extremely strong beginning for this show.
Barrett.
You want it to stop, but it just keeps coming. When it stops, that's when you really want to start to fret.
It was pretty hype.
Yeah.
It was pretty
That
hype.
scene
I love
that scene was cool as hell.
That was cool as hell.
That was
Yeah.
Aunt Dursley. Aunt Dursley was delivering that dialogue.
Getting it, dude. Yeah, that was fantastic. I feel like you're right, Carboni, that this show doesn't make you feel like you're waiting for the cameos to hit.
Yeah.
I do feel like I'm waiting for this to hit me as like, this is a must-watch TV show. I think that we're pretty far from that right now, but I think that they've set up a lot of questions that I want the answers to. I want to know more about the home planet, and I feel like giving the amount of flashbacks and attention and building the secrecy around it, like don't ever say you're from there and all that stuff. It's like, cool. You guys are building Star Wars for me. Like, you're building a galaxy that can, like, to again your point, Carboni, like in 40 years we'll be referencing this planet and like it'll mean something to people, right? So it's like building new legacy, new characters, new worlds, I think is super important. And I think that these 3 episodes at the very least have proven that there is room, like we've all thought, for things that aren't lightsabers in the Star Wars universe. And I'm hopeful for them to continue down this path, and that if this is an example of the direction they're going, I'm hopeful. Not sure about this one, but I'm hopeful.
As always, Tim, guardedly optimistic Geddes with his
Only
Star
one
Wars.
M, but still, all the pessimism. It's how
Actual
it
last
goes.
comment with the cameo thing, and that's why I think this is so good, is that you're not waiting for the next cameo because you're invested in the moment. But at the same time, I think we'll get some nice surprise cameos, just naturally, like where we're going in this part.
I heard Howard the Duck's in this.
My guess, honestly, Anthony, look at me. Our boy Jimmy Smits is gonna pop up at some point.
Oh yeah,
you know.
Well, you got to get the Smits. I mean, we know that Mon Mothma is showing up, and we love Mon Mothma. We also know, we saw in the trailer, the GOAT, Saw Gerrera, does show up, and that's all I'm waiting for. That's all I'm waiting for.
In the comments below what you're waiting for and what you thought of episodes 1 through 3 of Star Wars Andor. We'll be back next week with episode 4 and the recording of Star Wars Rogue One in review rewatch. Really excited for all of this, but until next time, may the Force be with you. Bye.